listening to the AFTERBUZZ TV Network, now the largest new media platform on the web, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
Very good, Keith Johnson.
From the AFTERBUZZ Studios in Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies, this is AFTERBUZZ TV's Mad Men After Show. We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest news and gossip. And now, another post-game wrap-up show for your favorite TV show. It's AFTERBUZZ TV's Mad Men After Show.
Hey there, Mad Men fans. Welcome to the AFTERBUZZ TV Mad Men After Show. This is Season 7, Episode 1, Time Zones. I'm Matt Lieberman. Joining me on the panel all season long, fantastic and talented Mr. Joe Braswell.
Matt Lieberman, how are you?
I'm doing very well. It's good to be on a panel with you again, man.
Good to see you again.
Yes, and the lovely Sterling Cates is joining us.
Hello, nice to meet you guys. I'm excited to be here.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you. A Sterling on this show is very apropos.
Yes.
Joe Sanfilippo, unfortunately, not joining us this week, but he will be back for next week. I want to thank everybody who's joining us this season, who's never listened to the show. For those of you, hello. For those of you who were here last season, I just want to clear something up. During our finale, we had teased all season long that we were going to have a bunch of wonderful guests, and they, unfortunately, several of them dropped out before our finale. It was a big bummer for everyone involved, especially the audience, and I don't want anyone to feel hoodwinked. These things happen all the time, and unfortunately, this was the time that it happened to us. I hope that we haven't lost any of your trust and that we can provide you with the best possible Mad Men podcast going forward, and that you'll be thoroughly, thoroughly satisfied all the way through the finale next year. But with that out of the way. Yeah, well, with that out of the way, let's talk about this episode, gang. It was really, really great to get back into the world of Mad Men. We're taking place around January 20th, 1969. That was the date of Nixon's inauguration. As we briefly saw on television, Jim Cutler was talking about it. Everyone's kind of in a weird spot after the end of Season 6. How are we feeling?
We're feeling great. I think that was a great way to sort of get into where we are time-wise chronologically, was having that Nixon inauguration, and specifically that passage of that inauguration speech, which was, we found ourselves rich in goods, ragged in spirit, reaching magnificent precision of the moon, then falling in a raucous discord on the earth. It felt like, that was sort of where Dawn is right at that moment. So not only is it perfect in telling us where we are chronologically, but also sort of where maybe Dawn is in that moment. That's what I thought. I think it was great. But it was great. It's great to be back. It's great to feel like after a year of all these other shows you watch and all these other shows we covered and we love, to get right back into the very specific groove and tone of Mad Men is very, very comforting, like an old coat.
I didn't really know where it was going to go starting off with season 7, because at the end of Season 6, I was expecting Don to kind of face his problems head on. Right. And then I just felt like no problems had been solved when we started Season 7. So I'm interested to see how that plays out.
Well, it's very much like Don. We've seen him come close to actively grappling with his existential issues and with his marital issues, back in Season 4 when he was with Faye, who was an active partner, who was someone who was competing with him on the same level intellectually, who was calling him on things. It was the first time that he, so very early on into a relationship revealed parts of his past, and then he saw something easier in Megan, and he ran away from it. And I'm starting to wonder how far away he ran from the moment he showed his kids where he grew up. Because I was expecting more of that. I was wondering what kind of personal journey could he be on. But instead, much like the quote that you're talking about with Nixon, he's tasted the highs and now he's tasting the lows, and he doesn't want to have to deal with these difficult emotional issues while on this very low rung of this ladder.
He's also a bit displaced. I mean, we always talked a little bit about Matt, how last season, how Don Draper of the early 60s, the dapper Don Draper of the early 60s seems a little out of place in the late 60s in this counterculture, spot. But literally we see him displaced because he really is not quite at home in the East Coast in New York with no job really, and really alone in his apartment with the door that won't close, which we'll talk about, maybe metaphor there. And he's certainly not at home in LA with the coyotes and the hills and the whatever else is going on
and
there.
What he was wearing, his
and what
outfits.
He was wearing, his outfits,
compared to Pete, he looked real out of place.
Oh yeah.
Pete was right at home.
Oh my God. Pete's entrance was just absolutely stellar.
And their hug was so funny to me. I laughed out loud.
It's like, we're hugging now? Is that
Is that what we do? Those LA changes everybody. And I love this show's particular take on LA satire, sending it up and how, in contrast to New York, we are kind of ridiculous.
I love that. It's very, very Annie Hall with that, that whole sort of every coming to New York from LA. I love the whole New Yorkers idea of Los Angeles. It's always a funny thing. But I'm a native Los Angelino, so I don't really love it. But it's always a funny thing to see on screen and in a film, like what New Yorkers think of us here, and it's always the same.
I had the same prejudices when I moved out here, and now I'm the worst. Yeah. I'm the most LA, and I apologize for it. I don't apologize, but I should apologize. Yeah. Another person kind of orbiting around Don here is Freddie Rumsen, and this episode opens with a line that people are probably going to pick apart to death. Where Freddie's basically saying, "Are you listening? You better pay attention." Yeah. And he does this incredible pitch, the best pitch Freddie Rumsen has ever pitched in his entire life.
Exactly. I should have known that moment. Like, Freddie's a goddamn genius.
I know.
Like, when did he get so smart?
I was watching it, and I had just starting it, and I was like eating popcorn, and I was like, "Are you listening?" And I was like, who is that? Is that Freddie?
Yeah.
I was so confused for a second.
Pants Freddie?
Yeah.
From Mrs. Pants
Yeah,
Freddie.
it definitely is. Yeah.
So, we get this great monologue from Joel Murray, and Peggy's like, that's amazing, but of course she puts her own spin on it. But what we come to discover is that, of course, Freddie could never have done that by himself, and that the job that Don keeps alluding to over the course of this episode is actually funneling his creative through Freddie and splitting the commission.
Very much so.
Yes, which
the
is
Cyrano de Bergerac, if you will.
Right, and a part of it makes you feel like, oh, okay, big swinging Dick Don. He's not going down without a fight. He's going to bring his ideas to the table, even if he has to do it through Freddie. But honestly, it's just sad.
Yeah. Well, I didn't take it as that so much, although it could be that. I think it's a lot of more. This is who this guy is. Like, he literally could not just sit in his apartment and not be giving these ideas or working in some capacity, even if it's going to be through Freddie. If Freddie said, "I'm not going to give you any money," I think Don would do it anyway.
Yeah. I think honestly, it's one of the only things about his life that makes him feel good about himself. He has so much that's going on right now that's the one thing he's being successful at, and I think that's why he wants to continue it. Yeah. That was my take on it.
I loved that. I love that. And what I also loved is we get this scene, and I know fans, I'm bouncing around Don's storyline, but we're sticking to him for the moment. What I loved in that scene on the plane on the ride home, he meets this woman played, I think, by Neve Campbell.
Exactly.
Yes.
Neve Campbell.
Yeah.
Bringing back our Fox our teenage series. We had Linda Cardellini last season from Freaks and Geeks, and now we've
got Party of Five,
Neve Campbell.
And we had Alexis Bledel the year before from Gilmore Girls.
Rory.
Yeah, we're just mining the '90s on this show.
We need Dawson's Creek. We need
I don't know. We could get a Katie Holmes.
Joey.
We could get a Vanderbeek. We could get a Joshua Jackson. But in any case, he does his Don Draper thing. He can't help himself. He's flirting a little bit. He's sensing a connection. But he not only, when she offers to sleep with him, he turns her down, which ordinarily, that's a huge Don Draper trigger. That's how he copes with stress, is he funnels his energy into these women, into empty pleasure. He turns her down. How do we feel about that? I feel pretty great.
I'm proud of him.
Yeah.
But he made a move on her first when he kind of went to touch her face, and then she said she was going to close her eyes. And then when she started talking about her husband a little bit, I think he saw pieces of him in her husband's story when she was saying that he was an alcoholic. That was what I got from the whole thirst thing. He died of thirst. Okay, I was just making sure.
He was an alcoholic, and his body was too ruined.
Right, and after that story, I think maybe he had to get back to work, which he kept saying to everyone as an excuse for. I don't know. I was proud of him.
I mean, don't you put me in a position to be a bad guy here, but
come on, Joe.
I was proud of him. That, like, I think that part of what we touched on this last season. I think that part of what we love about Don Draper is we love to watch Draper be Draper, to seduce and bed and be debaucherous in all these ways. although he's a very despicable human being, you know, as we know, but I don't know. I don't know how to root for this guy anymore, man. I love Don Draper. I don't know if I should be rooting for Don to be Don again. Come on, Don, be old swinging dick Don. Or should I root for Don to I don't know, Don, this is great. You should get together and be a family man and do your thing.
I just want him to embrace his inner Dick Whitman, and that's what I felt like he was doing in the finale last season. Right. And, even though we're not seeing him with his kids continuing to explore his past and open that up, this is a step in the right direction.
Certainly.
He's not going for the easy way to deal with his stress. He's not, going to make a mistake. This work that he's doing with Freddy is honestly the life preserver that's keeping him afloat. It's all he's got left.
Well, this is back to what I was saying about I think that he'd do it for free. I mean, I think that what's more important than betting on Nev Campbell or running around or even being in L.A. wearing, sweaters around your waist like Pete, or around your neck.
Around your neck
like
and
Pete.
his plaid pants.
His plaid pants is the work is being creatively fulfilled, and that's what he's doing, and that's what he seems like he's at. And you're starting to see parallels with that, of course, with Peggy, which we'll get to later, who's clearly not creatively fulfilled and wants that same thing. And that sort of talks about the purity of who Peggy and Don are as these perfect sort of creative ad people.
Agreed. And I know that this is kind of taking something from out there, but have you ever read the book Man's Search for Meaning? Man's Search for Meaning.
It's not read that book.
Viktor Frankl. He was in a concentration camp, and he's the father of logotherapy, which is very much about finding a purpose for our existence. That's why we exist. We exist to find meaning and then to fulfill it. And the one thing that has been truly fulfilling, even as it's frustrating for both Don and Peggy, is their work. So I think at the very least, him realizing this and putting all of his energy into that, as much energy as he can into his marriage, but frankly, he knows that there's not much left to be done.
Sure.
I don't know how much their marriage is going to recover, but that rather than sleeping with random people, he's focusing on the work, knowing that he has to get back into that, I think is so vitally important. And it speaks of a level of self-awareness that maybe he didn't have previously.
I guess it would. I agree. That's well said. I think I'm having a hard time figuring out if I'm rooting for Don, the character, like Don Draper, the man who I want to see do well and embrace his inner Dick Whitman, or if I, the viewer, want to see Don Draper, the lecherous,
the cipher,
the caricature who we've grown to love. Like I'm having this trouble as a viewer figuring out which Don I want to see.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's me.
I think it kind of depends on how it comes out that Freddy is kind of like his
proxy.
Way in. Yeah. So I feel like once that comes out, it's just how the reaction to that I think is going to determine whether Don comes back to the agency or if he's doing his own thing.
They have this moment where Freddy basically is like, there's this job opening, why don't you go after it yourself? Why do you even need me? Right. And he's like, I have a job. Well, they haven't called you. It's been 2 months. I don't know if it's ever going to happen. And, is Don just deeply in denial about that, about the fact that he may never get to go back to the agency he helped build?
Well, I think there's two things there. I think the thing is that there's something about Don that wants to believe that, like, this agency will remain on top, and I will still, even from the shadows, because I helped build this thing, and my name is still on it.
Yeah.
It's
not, though. Sterling Cooper and partners.
Right.
Yeah, man.
That's right.
Well, he's still getting paid whether or not he's helping Freddy or not.
That's true.
So,
that's very true. So I don't know. I mean, I just sort of feel like there's some pride there that, like, I want to make sure that these guys stay on top until he starts his own agency, which they may or may not. I don't know, but
yeah. Well, there's definitely a lot going on. I want to talk about Don and Megan before we move on.
I do. Can I just say that 1969 looks freaking amazing?
I know. Yes.
Megan Draper in 1969.
Rolling up in that
slow-mo?
convertible.
That slow-mo of her getting
That's the whole series.
Swish.
Yeah.
Everyone loved it. Jessica Perret, still absolutely lovely.
I mean, what's wrong with her?
Yeah, a lovely job. It's the little things as you see the America of Mad Men, the America of the 60s change over the course of the series.
Right.
It's little things like, when he opens the door to her convertible to let her into the passenger side, and she says, I can't move the seat. And so she drives him. It's like it's a little thing that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it's a sign of the changing times.
Yeah.
That not only does Megan not expect to ride passenger, she's not going to try and fix this, move this seat back so that he can get the experience of driving her car.
Sure.
He's never around, so it's like it's a little thing.
And I do love that the entire intro to Los Angeles with that iconic, escalator into LAX, which is still there, which we've seen in.
And we get that moving shot. It's kind of an homage to Jackie Brown.
It's been in multiple movies that exact same shot because it's a real thing. Every time I go to LAX and it's still there, and I look over, I feel very much like I'm in every other movie I've seen. But I do. There's something that grounds it if you know exactly what that is. Even if you've never been to Los Angeles, you know that you're in LAX, and then coming out and having that shot of, I think it's actually the exterior. I think it's Ontario Airport that they use, but
they use it all the time.
Yeah, and I think it's Ontario, but it looks like LA back then with some palm trees, and it's I don't know. The whole thing was very, very perfect. It felt very 1969.
Mm-hmm. I love seeing Megan like that, just because most people like Betty and Sylvia kind of became objects for Don and something he can control. But the fact that she's moved across the country, she's driving now. He's in the front seat to her. Yeah. So I just loved seeing that she's kind of independence. Yeah, and she's like moving on. So the fact that she was able to move across the country by herself and do that whole thing, I already think that speaks to how their relationship stands right now.
Their marriage is in a very interesting gray area that I think the best way to describe it, Don does it on the plane when he's talking with Neve Campbell, and he says, she already knows that I'm a bad man, and she says, well, how long have you been married? Not long enough. Yeah. The fact is, this marriage, the well's been poisoned.
Sure.
It's not like they have an extremely long history to draw on and try to save it. They're now, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a marriage of convenience. They still sleep together, but he has to ask for it.
And barely. And she was not very thrilled about it.
She was not having it.
It was awkward. I don't think they knew how to be with each other intimately. Yeah. And I think that was really awkward for her, it seemed.
Of course.
It made me wonder, if she was, I don't want to say having an affair, but if she was, the way her reluctance initially made me think oh, well, maybe there's someone else. But then I thought, no, I think it's just, she's out. I think she's out of this marriage.
I just don't think she feels close to him anymore. Yeah. And if they're married, then I don't know if.
Well, it was hard to feel close to him even when they shared a space, even when they lived in an apartment together. Yeah. Now that he's, miles and miles away and she's alone in Los Angeles in this rented house, making all these new friends, he's not a part of her life. No. And, this sex is almost like, it feels almost like an expectation rather than something desired.
It's also really all they really had that really, that Don can ground Don to what the old relationship used to be. Because everything else is foreign and, including him bringing the TV in, and everything else is foreign in every respect. But what's so sad about it is the one thing that he knows that he can go to, it's so awkward. This super seducer Don Draper have to ask, that way. I forget. We were going to celebrate.
Yeah,
right?
where were we going to celebrate?
That's his move.
And she said she responded with, "I didn't know if you wanted to."
Well,
it's like, well,
we should celebrate, right? Take off my shirt.
Yeah,
well, that's not sexy.
It's not.
It felt really forced.
Yeah,
the whole thing.
And I really like the point that you're bringing up, where she says, I don't know if you wanted to. It's not necessarily a dig against him, but if he's going to stray outside the marriage, it's kind of you're going to internalize that and feel that a knock against you. Like I feel like my husband wouldn't necessarily need to have sex with me when he sees me because he's got all these other women. What's the point? I did not prepare for this.
Yeah, and he's okay with living across the country from her, and he's okay. And she said when he got the TV that you're not here long enough for us to fight about this.
Yeah. Right.
So obviously, I don't think she's wanting to put a lot of the effort in.
Right.
And she's not going to
she shouldn't have to.
You're absolutely right. He has very little right to be making any big decisions without her, to be buying things and putting them in her house without her, to have any say over the life that she's living. Unless she's going to completely bankrupt him, she's earned a vast amount of freedom and power.
On her own.
Totally.
I find myself actually stepping outside of the intimacy of that relationship. I find myself really rooting for Megan, as an individual, not so much rooting for Megan and Don as a couple, and not so much rooting for Don as an individual, but for Megan. Megan, she's made her way. She's worked very hard to get to this point, and this is in her solo story. I'd almost want to see a spin-off show about Megan in LA doing her own thing, continuing, because I'm rooting for her.
In her own way, she's kind of at the point that Peggy was a couple seasons ago when she was finally coming into her own as a copywriter, and she decided to leave SCDP.
Right.
Well, she's never wanted Dawn to define her and her career, and I've always admired that about Megan.
Absolutely.
Even at the firm, and then she was like, well, I really want to be an actress. So
Yeah. And he was like, what?
I respect her dedication to her dream. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And now she's so close. She's got a callback for this pilot. Potentially she could be on TV all the time again. She's still, I'm sure, furious at Dawn for costing her job on the soap opera.
Yeah.
She was there for a solid year. She was working. She was on television. Her career was happening. And he says, we're moving to the coast. Pack your things. Oh, sorry, honey, it's not happening anymore. And what, now I just have to live with it?
Yeah.
I was really happy to see her still go forward with moving to California because she sacrificed so much with her show in New York and everything. So I think it was really good for me to see her still go and pursue her dreams acting.
Yeah.
I think there's also a larger picture about where, now we'll talk about this later maybe, but after 7 seasons where the women characters have come, we saw them being sort of objectified and also mistreated and from Peggy on down. And now, where Peggy has gone, the arc that Peggy's taken from where she started, the arc that
Joan's taken
from where she started, we'll get to see what's going to happen with January Jones, but and then we'll see even Megan, like from where she started to where she is. It's a weird shift, as a power shift here. So quiet power shift to the women really just being upperly mobile and really taking control.
It's very
of things.
exciting.
And the women have so much. All of their work backs them up, so you really can't argue with how far they've gotten.
100%. And we're gonna get into way more of that in a bit. We're gonna talk about Joan. I want to just briefly bring up the scene with Megan's agent before we moved on. Which was a lot of fun. Telephone at the table, and it just speaks to the awkwardness and the showiness of what is left of their marriage.
Right.
Where they have to make the show of, she gets this great news, and he goes to congratulate her. He doesn't kiss her on the mouth. He kisses her on the forehead.
It was it was like halfway between her cheek and her forehead.
But it was like a two-step motion because he goes forward towards the lips, then up. Kiss. It was very awkward for all involved.
Yeah.
It seemed like they had the agent fooled, though. He said, "You're my favorite couple."
Yeah,
and that kind of made me feel uncomfortable because I was like, "You don't obviously."
Well,
don't know that.
as he said, he's just there for one reason: greed. So even if things are weird, he's just going to butter them up.
Right.
It's hard not to see when you see Don Draper with quote his matinee idol good looks and and obviously Megan's gorgeous. It's like, oh, well, look at you two, everything's fine.
Yeah. No, she's starting to use him the same way that he has used her and used Betty in the past, where he needed a beautiful woman on his arm for appearance's sake.
Yeah.
She needs a handsome, stable, executive husband.
Getting more shifts here.
To show, okay, this is a woman who does have it all and can be this, vision that people can, when they see her on TV or in the movies, they can identify with this version of her, this vision of her. Okay, I want to talk really quickly about iTunes, and then we're going to move on. Much more Mad Men to come. Folks, we love having you here on AfterBuzz TV. We here at AfterBuzz, we produce over 60 hours of incredible quality content every week, and it's all free, which is completely crazy. We must be mad. We must be out of our mind bonkers. But the fact is, that's what's happening. And what is the best way that you can support us? Well, I'll tell you. We don't want any of your money. We only want a little bit of your time. Go to iTunes, rate and review the show. Rate and review the show. It only takes a second. It's completely harmless. And what it does for us, not only does it help us get your feedback so we know that we're doing this show the best way that we possibly can, that we're identifying and connecting with you, but it also helps our bosses know that we're doing a great job, and it helps keep the lights on and the doors open here at AfterBuzz TV. It's how iTunes tracks their ratings. It's how this show can stay on top. We want to be the #1 Mad Men podcast on the web. I don't think that that's an impossible goal. So please get at it. Get to the iTunes, rate and review the show. We love 5-star ratings, but don't lie to yourself. Give what you feel. It's the best way to help us get guests and to, make this show the best it can possibly be. So thank you.
What he said.
All right. So we were talking about Peggy a little bit in reference to Freddie Rumsen. Let's talk about where she is right now. At the end of last season, she came so close to running away with Teddy Chaw, but then he totally backed out at the last minute like a punk.
Yeah.
Because he has a family. I'm so not advocating for adultery.
No.
But, we're obviously crushed for Peggy.
Yeah.
Because
she's still dealing with that, really. It seems she's taking it really hard still.
Yeah.
And also kind of struggling with that and her place at the new agency with SCMP and her new boss and everything. She's just like really frustrated this entire episode.
Yeah.
But she's keeping it cool, I think, for the most part.
Till the end.
Until she like breaks down at the end, which was really sad.
Well, what's sad about this episode is she's realizing that without Dawn as a conduit for her ideas, who sparks to great creative versus functional creative,
Right.
That she's in a real bind here. She's up against a wall. This guy actively does not care for her work. He has made that clear to her. She's still trying to please him, but it's not going to happen. He just isn't a fan. And when you're in a situation like that, you're going to feel completely helpless.
Right. And she's frustrated with the fact that he's cool with just, staying static. And she wants better work and better, ads and that whole thing. But he's just like, what did he say? He was like, why don't you just open the door instead of like trying to break through the ceiling or something?
Yeah.
That was
He was basically like, the door's already open.
Yeah.
Why are you?
Like, what is it?
That's got to be frustrating when she's trying to do so well and she's kind of like stepping back down the ladder, I feel like.
Well, she's being disrespectful, which she didn't realize, I think, when she was working for Dawn, who was innately disrespectful, and fostered that kind of environment where you can speak your mind openly, even if it might piss someone off.
Exactly. Dawn may have been disrespectful, but at least he was listening, and at least he, was plussing her ideas and vice versa, and it was a great working environment as opposed to now.
Exactly, because if he was impressed with something, he would let her know and he would jump on it. He wanted the best idea. He wanted it to come through him, but he still wanted the best idea to work out. This guy, Lou, he is very much about, I think, dollar signs, making it the easiest possible way. What does the client want? How can we get them out the door and keep their money? He's one of those people who was always a mid-level creative who rose to the top just by being around long enough. Yeah. He's one of those guys who kind of failed upwards.
The lower end of the mid-level creative, because he's not. I mean, he's more of an administrator than he's a creative. I mean,
exactly.
He's in a creative position, obviously, but he's not. He's not that guy.
Let's talk about this meeting that
I do. I want to say one thing about back to Ted and Peggy. I think it's just the whole thing was so heartbreaking last season with and seeing how this ended up, because Ted seemed so earnest and so taken by Peggy, which he was. I think it was genuine, and I think the thing about Peggy, why she fell for Ted, was a combination of the attention that she paid him, and also it came through the prism of him being impressed with her ideas and him being impressed with her as a creative. And I think that's what she wanted. That's what she wanted from Don, and that's what she's always wanted in a man.
I think she felt very respected by him, and that's obviously an attraction.
And respect is sexy.
Yeah.
Especially when you aren't being given very much.
So I think that sort of pumped her up, and I think now, I guess where I'm getting at is, without trying to sound too sexist or too like I'm going one place, but I feel like this is what she's always wanted from Don. I feel like Don's always been the one for Peggy. I feel like that, Ted's has been this facsimile of Don. He's come in, but he's, giving her all the praise and giving her all the things that she always wanted from Don, and then he leaves her as well. And now you have, your boy Lou, who's there, and she's absolutely frustrated because there's another guy who's just not Don. I think she's feeling completely alone and empty.
I don't know that it's necessarily framing them against Don. I think she's trying to figure out, how do I it's always been the same thing ever since she became a copywriter. How do I make my career, more open? How can I be more successful? How can I do the best work? How can I be more respected? And, versus these two guys who, Don, incredibly difficult, but understands good creative. Ted, more of an idealist and just, kind of a better, more well-rounded morally a person, and he's, he responds to good creative. This is a guy who has a job, and he has a family, and he's going to go home to that family when he's done with the job for the day. Right. He's not thinking about it in grand terms of winning a Clio. This is just the impression that I've gotten. I know I feel like I'm throwing around a lot of absolutes.
But I just think that what this now that we're getting the 7th season and we're searching for what this is all about, I think part of the story here is this is a creative, it's I think it is a creative and romantic love story between Don and Peggy to a certain degree. I mean, the romantic we have to be seen, but definitely the creative love story from beginning to middle to end right now, as we see. I think that like the two without each other, they're at their best, at least creatively with each other.
Together.
And so, and I think that's what we're seeing, especially those 2 scenes at the end there. We're seeing these 2 people who, without each other, are they need to be together creatively and maybe romantically. I don't know. Maybe it's a little too on the nose.
That may be a little too far.
It feels a little too on the nose, but I just, that's what I want to believe.
I've always liked the friendship and how close they were.
Yeah.
If that leads to something romantic, I don't know. I have never really thought of them romantically before.
Yeah, well, I'm
other
putting
than
it out
just
there.
having a strong
Well,
friendship.
I mean, the last time, the last time that they really explored that side of it, you look at season 4 episodes like The Suitcase, where she actually actively brought it up. Like, why didn't that ever happen with me? It was right after he had slept with Allison, his secretary. And he's like, you are a very attractive woman. That's just not. It's just not what he was looking for with her.
Right.
Until
1969.
Some part of me wants to see them as full partners in an agency together by the end of the series. We don't know
and
if
by
that's
full partners, you mean?
No.
It's partners in business. It's a matter of respect, Braswell.
I'm not. I don't want to be the internet to kill me for saying that Peggy's only something with Don, because clearly Peggy's capable of doing whatever she wants on her own. I'm just saying,
but
she's at her creative best with Don.
Yeah,
that's true.
I'm not saying she needs Don to be the best.
Let's say this: she's at her creative best when there's someone recognizing how good her ideas are and are giving her the latitude to make them happen.
Fair enough, Don Draper.
So let's talk about this meeting, the way that he runs it. He's super low-key, casual, cavalier, throwing out lame jokes. He's like a lame dad.
Yeah. He is. He's a super lame dad.
Yeah.
He's actually like the clients they would have in the mid-'60s. Like some of the clients they would have that come in like, I don't get it. What is all this creative stuff? That's the boss now. It's weird that
and
Peggy's
Jim
pitching
Cutler
that guy.
loves him. Jim I think it's just a quick line. Cutler was like, he's doing a great job.
Well, Cutler's all about the money.
Exactly.
We know that.
Cutler's all about the money, and this guy is keeping the money where it's supposed to be in the SC&P pockets. But maybe not the best creative influence. We do have a scene between Ted and Peggy in this episode. She comes in early. She asks Stan if he wants coffee. And there he is, just out of the blue, and she has to stay in the same room with him, and we can just feel her flesh start to crawl. She's so furious just looking at him.
Yeah.
To me, it seemed like he acted like nothing had ever happened. And I felt so bad for Peggy in that moment.
Yeah.
And that the fact that he didn't even apologize or ask I don't know. He didn't seem very concerned with with her.
It's been a couple of months.
Right.
It's been 2 months, so I'm sure that they've had this conversation and they've had it out. I do think he was very much aware of it. He was cognizant of it. He got out of the room as soon as he can.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was glowing behavior.
Well, the room got colder and colder and colder to the point he's had to get out of there or freeze to death.
Yeah.
it was a cold room.
Do you think that if California wasn't a thing and he was back in New York, that the temptation would rear its ugly head again?
Well, I mean,
or do you think it's over?
I don't know. It's tough. I think that there was a very specific situation that was happening with Ted in that moment, and then meeting someone like Peggy, and then versus what was happening at home. I think that he had that jarring moment last season with the kids and the family, where he's like, "What am I doing? I have kids. I love my wife." I think it was just. I think it was. I don't know that he would. I mean, the temptation would be there because I think Peggy's wonderful. And I have a gigantic crush on her. I always have, but I think the temptation would be there. But I think he's done. I think he's
okay.
He's done.
I think it's done.
I'm personally. First of all, everyone wants Peggy to wind up with someone who respects her as if she wants to wind up with someone, which I think she does on a level. Right. That it be someone who does respect her, who treats her like an equal, who recognizes, how wonderful and talented she is, and gives her the freedom to pursue her career. That's what we all want. I'm still very curious about it, and it's been percolating in the background.
Don't say Stan.
Yes, I am going to say Stan.
I love Stan.
Peggy Stan.
I love Stan.
We
Pan
all
all the way, man. Yeah. Pan. Here's the thing. Look, he's messed up many times before, but he's loved her since the beginning.
Sure.
Since back when he was a jerk.
Sure.
So I'd like to think that at some point he may evolve enough that she considers him a worthwhile potential. Anyway.
Well, I don't think she's opposed to that. In season 6, she kind of entertained that idea for a second in his office, or in her office. But,
right.
I mean,
but I don't know.
But it was just for a
like that
second.
idea. I like Pan. Maybe a different name.
Maybe a different name, yeah. Rolson, maybe Rizzo and Olsen. Yeah, I don't know.
Steggy?
I don't know. Definitely not Steggy. All right.
I kind of like Steggy.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to talk about Joan. Who's dealing with some client issues of her own. Kenny Cosgrove, man, in his increased age and lacking an eyeball that works, the man has gotten pissed.
Yeah,
okay.
He's a little gristled veteran of the business here.
He's not taking any guff.
No.
He is dealing with all these clients all on his own. He's the only, major account executive left in New York because we have all these other branches now, or two, in Detroit and LA, and he's feeling stretched thin. He wants a subordinate, someone who, when dealing with all these clients, he can appear more important, even though it doesn't really change anything. He needs for appearance's sake, because these clients, they want to feel like they're getting the best possible treatment.
I think Detroit, though, last season really took a lot out of
Oh, totally.
And they're still
it took an eye out of him and a leg temporarily.
Yeah, exactly. So I think he's, I feel like that hardened him. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see him transformed to this guy we see now, which is tyrannical, which makes the eye patch all the more ironic. It seems like he's
his step perception's all off.
Yeah, the peg leg and the...
Oh, when he tossed that earring and completely missed. Felt so bad for him.
Fantastic,
yeah. So Joan takes it upon herself to try to fix this situation with Butler's shoes, and to go in Ken's stead for this meeting, where we have a guest star, Dan Bird of Cougar Town and Aliens in America fame, who I love for his comedic work, playing Wayne Barnes, who is the new director of, what was he at?
Marketing. He's a marketing.
He was the head of marketing.
The new head of marketing at
Butler
Footwear.
But he's also, he's a business school guy, and he's very, very smart.
The 4 Ps.
Thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, so he's very much like, what do we need an agency for?
Exactly. So he's going to cut the agency out completely and open his own internal advertising section, and advertising department, and Joan asks him for just a few days before he does anything.
Right.
And, of course, the man can't stick to his word. But in the meantime, Joan seeks out a professor of business, and in exchange for information about what the agency does on Madison Avenue for this new study, he gives her some information that is vital to her keeping the client. I loved Joan's storyline this week because it shows that no matter how much power she receives in the office, she's always hungry. She finally feels like she can go after the same things as the men in the office.
Sure.
With very little trepidation. Like, you talk about evolution, she felt like she had all the power that a woman could possibly have in an office environment in season 1. When we meet her, she's Queen Bee, but ultimately, against all of these men, she has no power.
Right.
And then we've seen her fight and claw every step of the way to accrue the level of power and respect that she has. But now, she's acting like an account executive, and she's doing a good job.
She is. She's also either struggling or trying to find her footing with her methodology. Like, you see when she went to meet the guy for dinner, there was a bit of like, I'm going to use my Joanness and flirtation, to sort of talk to him. He's like, yeah, my wife, I'm not interested in that. And then she says, okay, whatever. And then when she met with the agent guy, and her reaction was like,
oh, the professor, yeah.
I'm sorry, the professor.
Yeah.
Professor, her reaction was like, basically, don't come on to me. He's like, I'm not interested in you. There's a weird, juxtaposition of her still trying to find her way through.
It's definitely like her going through these growing pains of her position as like a secretary and then her position as a partner. Yeah. So it's natural for her to think people are hitting on her all the time, because they are.
She's been doing it for 16 years.
Exactly.
Right. And so when he said that, like, what can you do for me, or whatever it was. Yeah. And she was like, well, I'm not here for that.
Right.
And then he was like, that's not what I'm talking about. So it's definitely it's a learning process for her to kind of take advantage of this power that she has now.
Well, she certainly did think that would work on the marketing guy. She's like, I got this. I'll go in there.
Well, it's got to be a huge surprise to someone who's been in this business as long as she has, and for, let's say, the first 14 years of it, all anybody cared about from her was her looks, culminating in having to sleep with her and the other woman to gain her partnership. And she's just had an incredibly hard road. So to have these two guys be complete gentlemen in that regard and to treat her as a professional is an incredibly profound thing that we have to stop and admire. And I don't know, I hope that it frees her up to do everything she's ever wanted to do. Okay, wow.
Yeah. It happened.
Okay. So, that's going on. By the end of it, this guy, Wayne, is asking her what to do to save his ass, and she lays down the law, further securing the client, at least for now. She says, there's no idea whether or not they're going to stick around forever, and Ken's like, everyone says that. Every account executive I've ever had says that. That was basically the line, but referring to her like she's an account executive makes me think maybe she'll start getting some more accounts. I'd like to think so.
You go, girl.
Yes.
Go, Joan.
All right. Real quickly, because we're running low on time, we got to talk about Roger, who's living in a state of utter shambles. He's gone off the reservation.
One man's shambles is another man's...
Listen, you may enjoy the bed that can have any guest in it, but that opening shot where a man of his age, surrounded by strangers and mess on the floor, completely naked, and have to take a call from your daughter, I would say the man needs some help.
I just think he's lost all control over his family life and over his personal life. Just seeing that scene was like, wow, where? Yeah. And he's still really not relevant in the company. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just feel like he needs to find some footing.
Well, you talk about man's search for meaning, right? This is a guy whose sole importance was Lucky Strike, and then that was gone. Yeah. And he had to try to recover, and he was able to bring some business back to the company. But this is a guy who was born rich and never had to try.
Yeah, and not only that, like he's never had to really try, never been told no, sort of really gotten his way all the way through. So when he's had some adversity, there's nothing, a man in a midlife crisis does better than try to fall back on, his manliness or his man. And in LA, this whole new playground in the midst of late 60s sexual counterculture, he's able to have, I saw 5 women. What was happening there?
There were 5 women, maybe a couple men.
And there was a guy, and I was like, I never thought I'd see him and just going to sleep, not even there for anything else, with a guy and another woman in the bed. That was like a turning point for me with Roger.
I'm very, very curious to see more of what his storyline holds and get more of an idea of how he lives his life on the daily. We do get that scene with his daughter where she forgives him for everything, and he can't just accept that. It's a huge thing, and I completely understand why it would be hard to accept her forgiveness, because in order to accept it, he has to accept that he did wrong, real wrong.
Yeah. And he doesn't want to admit to that.
Right.
He's not ready.
He's
especially
willing,
to his daughter.
Right. He's willing to admit to, the blame part of it. I did these things and it was very bad. I'm sorry. But not like, Dad, I forgive you for really screwing with my life and with the people that you care about and that I care about. And I forgive you for that. He's not ready. No matter how far off the reservation he goes, it's going to take a journey inward to be able to get that out.
That's right. I think there is a fall, a bottom that we will see somewhere.
You don't think that this is bottom?
Well, I think that this is
pretty
bottom,
close.
but I think we're going to see it. We're going to see his recognition of like, wow, I'm at the bottom.
Yeah.
And we'll see where that goes.
Okay. Anything else from the agency? I think we pretty much we covered just about everything.
In that room.
Yeah, we saw Pete's. We saw the LA office. We saw Pete's office and everything.
Yes, we saw Pete looking very happy and tan. We touched on that.
And even Pete, it shows how out of touch Don is, because he said Pete looked like a hippie.
Like a hippie.
And he was definitely not a hippie.
And he was talking like a hippie. It's just because he's wearing colors.
Well, he said the good vibrations thing.
Yeah. All right. It's time for us to go into predictions.
All right.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
All right, folks, we got a promo for next week full of smoke and mirrors, as always.
I don't think I even watched it, actually. I think I stopped watching the promos because,
Yeah.
The Mad Men promos are like pretty like choppy. They don't see you don't see who the person's talking to.
It's like a Japanese puzzle box.
Yeah.
It's
all misdirection.
Exactly. So what are we thinking? What do we think we're going to see this season? Now, there's season 7 split into 2. We got 7 episodes this year, 7 episodes next year.
Yeah.
Where do we think this first half is going to take us?
I want to see a new agency formed with Don, maybe Pete and Peggy. And I want to see Roger get his act together and maybe get back involved with Joan. And Kevin.
Yeah, I'd like to see him raise his child.
I'd like to see him, just get his act together.
That seems like a way out. That's a definite good way out for Roger.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that's happening.
Great.
I don't know. I'm just really, I'm afraid. I think that there's always been this sort of looming dread about this entire series, and I don't, as much as I want it to happen, I don't think there's going to be a happy ending here. So I think we're going to see a lot of sort of the calm before I think the fall, the surprise fall at the end.
Did anyone think that when he went outside, when the door wouldn't close, and when he went out to the porch, did anyone think he was going to jump?
I thought he did for a very first time.
Opening credits.
He was going to. Yeah.
Right?
I'm like, there goes Don.
No, but I'm like, how bold would that have been to start season 7 that way?
Right.
I mean, anyway. We're running low on time. I'd love to see happy endings for everyone on the show, but this show tries to imitate life, and in life, there are very few happy endings. So we'll see what happens. I'm very excited for it.
Don't stop believing. Fade to black.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Sterling, where can the people find you?
You can find me at Sterling Cates on Twitter and Instagram.
Fantastic. Joe Braswell.
I'm Joe Braswell. You can find me at Joe K. Braswell on Twitter and Instagram, and on a bunch of other shows here, including Bates Motel, Hannibal, Blacklist, and the following.
Okay, and you can find me on Twitter at Matt Lieberman, if you should so choose, MattLieberman. Other new spring shows coming up. I got Playing House on USA, and I have Orphan Black on BBC America starting next week. Very excited about that. You can find all of my videos for SourceFed, all my sketches, everything like that. You can find that on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Matthew D. Lieberman. I want to thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next week. Have a good night.
Goodbye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.
Thank you for watching AfterBuzz TV on YouTube. For more of your favorite after shows and interviews, subscribe to our channel here, and be sure to share your opinion on the episode in the comment section below here. We'd love to see what you guys are buzzing about. Thanks again. Buzz you later.